Thank you, Joseph. Yes, President Zelensky on the day before the 2 year commemoration of the initiation of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine said democracies should not withdraw from the historical process of protecting all the values that have shaped our modern world. On Saturday, it was the people of the world's democracies that were shaping the modern world by taking to the streets in solidarity with Ukrainian freedom, Ukrainian futures, and with one voice, Ukrainian victory. These voices were heard across the free world. We are privileged to be joined by the wonderful Alex Kokcharov, a perpetual supporter of the London rallies. Alex is a risk analyst with a focus on Ukraine and is one of the leading voices supporting the Ukrainian cause. Alex, welcome to Tochnyi.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for having me.
Alex, if could I start with, when was your first Ukrainian rally in the UK?
Oh gosh, 2014, the times of the Crimea annexation. But then, ahead of the start, before the start of the full-scale Russian invasion in February 22, rallies started reappearing because there were concerns over the concentration of Russian troops on the borders with Ukraine, both in Russia and also in Belarus. So rallies re-emerged in early 2022. I don't remember exactly when they did re-emerge, but I think definitely by January. And there were quite sizable rallies throughout February before the invasion, including on the evening prior to the invasion. So it's been an ongoing process. So, they started well before the invasion, the full-scale invasion in 2022 began. Because people anticipated that something was happening, something was brewing. They were really concerned about Russia potentially invading Ukraine, and people were protesting. Can you hear me?
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, thank
Okay.
you. I'm just
Yeah.
our audience can see footage in front of them
Of course.
from
Yes.
the
Yes.
London rally, and I was just wondering, in terms of what you mentioned the 2014 invasion, and I'm curious what, in terms of motivations that people have for attending Ukraine solidarity rallies worldwide. Do you think these have changed over time, or have these motivations remained unchanged?
I think they have. Rallies in 2014 were overall smaller because it was, it wasn't a full-scale war, and Russia was operating using plausible deniability, claiming that these are not our soldiers, these are not our forces, they are the polite soldiers or the little green men. And there was ambiguity about, who these people in Crimea were. There was always a Ukrainian community in London for a very long time. It is much larger now, of course, but there was a significant Ukrainian presence back then, and Ukrainians were protesting. They would come to the Russian embassy in Notting Hill area and protest against what Russia was perceived to be doing. They were joined by people who were not from Ukraine, but from elsewhere, including the UK, who saw that what Russia was doing was undermining the international rules-based system and rules-based order, and trying to impose the use of force in order to change national boundaries and capture land, and especially by doing this by claiming that, oh, this is not us, these are some local militias who are just trying to protect their own rights about the language or culture or autonomy, despite the fact that, it was quite clear to a lot of people back in early 2014 that it was the Russian troops who were in Crimea, and it was the Russian troops who were operating in Donetsk and Luhansk, starting this hybrid warfare.
It certainly was. Thank you for that answer, Alex. how did you feel about the turnout and the support at the rally in London? I think we both went. It's fair to say we both went to this. What did the turnout surprise you? Um, what was your initial reaction when you arrived? When I left Marble Arch tube station, I didn't like I think I said to you, I didn't know what to expect. I've been to a few of these myself.
Yes,
What was your reaction to it?
I have been to a few of these myself. I was obviously at one of the big ones in at the end of February 2022, immediately after the start of the invasion, and that was a very large one. I think more than 100,000 people have joined. It was a really sizable rally. I did expect that it would be smaller this time around, that it would be smaller. But, when the march ended on Trafalgar Square, and you could see that the marchers filled both the upper level and lower level of Trafalgar Square, I would say at least 20 to 30,000 people were there. So it was quite a sizable rally. Yes, London has seen larger rallies, but the fact that people are still turning up and are showing to demonstrate that they do support Ukraine, that they have solidarity with Ukraine. I think it's important. So I did expect that there would be quite a turnout, not probably as large as in February 2022, but it was great to see a lot of people and a lot of flags and a lot of various Ukrainian symbols.
Flags matter a lot. You're right. There's an interview that I'd like to play later with a gentleman with a flag that meant a lot to him. But you're right. Turning up is and that visibility, it remains more important than ever. So can I ask what particular moments during the London rally were particularly memorable for you or poignant for you?
Well, it's difficult to say. Obviously, the you know the fact that there were so many people who were there, and that you had flags, not just flags of Ukraine, but also flags of United Kingdom, flags of other countries which support Ukraine, including Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, or flags of of the people who support Ukraine, such as Belarusians and Georgians. I am myself a Belarusian national, and I was there with two flags, a Ukrainian one and a Belarusian one. So I think the show of this solidarity and the singing of the anthem is obviously something that always touches you.
It was a very diverse event. I
Yeah.
found this one, wasn't it? There there've been a lot of Ukrainian rallies outside Downing Street, particularly. But this event encompassed a wide range of the Ukrainian diaspora abroad and a diverse range of people from across this particular country we're in, of the UK. Uh, the picture our viewers can see in front of them right now is of young people holding a gigantic Ukrainian flag, and I know that this was a feature of other rallies elsewhere. We have a member of our audience who sent us a picture that uh, we'll feature and talk about later. I, do you think that this that the message that was conveyed from these rallies is something which is unique to this one, or has this remained consistent?
I, I think it remained consistent. I'm reading that there were more than 1,000 events globally in 69 countries taking place over the weekend in various locations, from Australia and New Zealand all the way to various countries in the Americas. And it wasn't just the capital cities. I know that even in the UK, there were rallies in Nottingham, in Manchester, in Glasgow, in Edinburgh, and elsewhere. So it's not just the capitals, the large cities, which had those events, but also smaller locations had events in support of Ukraine. And I think it's really important because the message is that people still care about Ukraine. People have solidarity with Ukraine. People want to see more support for Ukraine. People don't want Russia to defeat Ukraine. And it just demonstrates to me that, all this talk about the so-called Ukraine fatigue is nonsense, really. A lot of people across a lot of countries still very much care about Ukraine, and they realize that if Ukraine is defeated, if Russia is allowed to achieve its objectives in Ukraine, that it would be a very ominous sign, which would bring really dark times, for Europe as a whole, if not the world.
Yes, well said. Russia's war aims in this war have remained unchanged, haven't they? How could you, for people who are perhaps not as well versed in what the Kremlin has specifically said are its war aims about this war, how would you describe these to somebody who is perhaps unfamiliar? One of those people who, as we walked down Oxford Street yesterday, were looking out of windows of Fortnum and Mason, these kind of places. Not to pick out this particular establishment, but that there are a lot of people looking out windows taking photos of rallies.
Yep.
And my point is, these people are not as impassioned about they're not particularly they didn't turn up. Maybe they were working. Others chose not to. Others are unaware of the importance of saving not just Ukraine but Europe. How would you convey the importance of Ukraine's resistance to
I,
these
th-
people?
I think it's very important because currently Ukraine serves as a shield against Russian aggression in Europe. It is especially obviously pronounced in countries which border Ukraine and which are outside of EU and NATO, such as Moldova. Um, we know that Russia is very open about its plans to subjugate Moldova as well. In terms of Ukraine, the officially declared objectives of the war are obviously complete nonsense. And in reality, what Russia is trying to achieve is A, to conquer territory, probably annexing all of eastern and southern Ukraine, thus depriving Ukraine access to the Black Sea, and to reduce the rest of Ukraine, rump of Ukraine, into a client state similar to that of Belarus, which is effectively a vassal of Russia, which doesn't have any independence in terms of foreign policy, and is run as a brutal dictatorship which represses its people. So this is the blueprint for Ukraine by Russia. Take about half of the country and annex it directly into Russia, all the way to Odessa and the borders with Moldova and Romania. And, for the rest of the country, leave it as an independent, so to say, state, but which would be fundamentally reduced to another Belarus, where its cultural identity would be destroyed, language would be persecuted, Russian language would be returned as a language of state affairs, and which would fundamentally operate as a vassal state of Russia. That's the objective, and the objective is to take all of this in order to present more security threats to countries which are on the horizon of the Kremlin, which include pretty much anything which was occupied by either Imperial Russia or the Soviet Union. And this includes Moldova, this includes the Baltic states, potentially even Poland and Finland. And we are talking about war with countries which are members of the European Union or of NATO, and this could potentially lead to a much larger war involving much of Europe.
Thank you, Alex. I really appreciate your answer. It's my pleasure to say that we are joined by one of our, the two of our colleagues actually. Bernardo, who can relay something, his experience about the rally in Berlin, and Vassal, who is currently in Dnipro and under air attack. And I was wondering if it's possible to bring. He seems to have disappeared. Okay. Yes, one of our colleagues, Vassal, he lives in Dnipro. Dnipro is unfortunately at the moment under air attack, and but in the meantime, Alex, I'd like, if it's possible, just to bring in to give our audience a comparison of because obviously, as you said, this was just one rally, and I'd like to turn to Bernardo, who was in Berlin, and ask him the same questions. What was? Can you give me a quick mic check, Bernardo, while you're there?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. All right. So, how did you feel the turnout was for Berlin? And whilst I find the video, could you give us an idea of how this rally compared to others you've been to?
Yeah, actually, usually I'm at a rally in my city in Magdeburg, but there wasn't really a rally this year. So yeah, basically I went to Berlin. I think it was like around 3,000 people in Berlin. I personally expected a bit more in Berlin, but yeah, it was a big and nice rally. Many flags there. So yeah, was quite nice there.
Could you identify a moment which you found particularly poignant? A speech that you heard?
Yeah, so maybe I just describe the setting a bit. Like you can see, we are in front of the or behind the Brandenburg Gate, the Brandenburger Tor. At first, it was slightly cloudy, and now then the sun basically broke through the clouds. It was very nice, a bit windy, so the flags were like good waving in the wind. And yeah, the sun was really nice shining. So was a really nice setting. If you can see, if you're looking through the second pillar from the left on the Brandenburg Gate, you can see yeah, the Embassy of Evil, how I call them, the Russian embassy, which is sadly behind the Brandenburg Gate, a couple of buildings behind this. Sadly, we didn't find a way to get rid of these yeah, flag of yeah, evil on this embassy. So but yeah, we had way more flags, and yeah, was quite a nice setting there. On the right to us was the American embassy. It was nice to see the US flag also waving there. So yeah, everyone was at times looking up to the embassy and to the flag, and was hoping for a good sign that hopefully from the US is coming a bit more aid in the future again. Yeah, everyone is waiting basically.
Well said. That will help.
Yeah. We had some nice speakers. Was really good. We had some Ukrainian heroes there, right? Who are in treatment in Berlin in the hospital, which showed up on the stage. Many volunteers were there, and I think this was the most important part for me. Also mentioned in the speech. Many of these volunteers are women, and many people also in the Ukrainian society which are doing much are women. And like the women in Ukrainian society, you can really see it inside and also outside of Ukraine. It's a very important factor which takes a huge responsibility, and yeah, you could feel this there in Berlin. It was yeah, quite nice to see. Very modern society, in my opinion.
Thank you, Bernardo. We'll certainly return to this later. Appreciate it. Alex, if I could ask you, what some of the conversations which I don't think are unique. I think these are fairly ubiquitous across these kind of rallies. Um, it's how we define terms such as liberalism versus illiberalism in the year of 2024 and in the third year of this war. Um, it is perhaps it is something which people are constantly having to redefine how democracies react to this brutal, tyrannical invasion of a peaceful, sovereign country. I was just wondering, how would you answer this question? How do we define liberalism and illiberalism in 2024 for people who are not in Ukraine?
I think the key to this definition is striving for freedom for individual citizens and for a nation as a whole. And obviously, any country is on some sort of scale in terms of where it is from the point of view of human rights or democracy. But I think the objective is the key thing is not only where it is right now, but where it is as a society is striving to be. We know that Ukraine is striving to be a free nation, which has free will to join alliances which it believes will benefit its society, its people. Ukraine wants to be part of the European Union. Ukraine wants to eventually be part of NATO. It wants to be integrated into the Euro-Atlantic structures and be part of the global West. And it shares the commitment to human rights and individual freedoms of citizens. And it wants to expand those. And yes, under circumstances of war, there are constitutional measures which have to be taken, such as martial law, which prevents, for instance, Ukraine from holding election right now. And yes, this will be used by various critics of Ukraine, most notably Russia, to claim that this makes Ukraine an undemocratic country. But I disagree with this assessment because we know that Ukraine holds free elections in which incumbents lose and step down from power in peaceful manner. This is what happened in 2019 when previous President Poroshenko lost the election and stepped down. And then there was a parliamentary election in 2019 in which the composition of the parliament has changed quite significantly, and many MPs were not returning into the parliament. Ukraine has this, and Ukraine has very robust local elections with mayors being elected, with local councillors being elected, and this is very, very important for Ukraine. But yes, some of the measures are part of constitutional provisions which say that during martial law, no elections can be held, and Ukraine must respect those constitutional provisions. From my perspective, it's not an indicator of Ukraine backsliding on democracy or on its commitment to human rights and freedoms of its citizens, but it's a necessary thing during the time of war. I'm sure that once the war is over, Ukraine will have competitive and fair elections in which, not every person who is currently in power, in the local council, in the parliament, will be returning to their positions. There will be some people who will be voted out, because that's the nature of Ukrainian society. It's a society which removes those people who are not seen as fit to serve their constituency, the country or the city or the local community, and removes them through the process of election. But ultimately, Ukraine has demonstrated that as a society, it is moving in the right direction. It is moving towards greater recognition of human rights, including all of its aspects, such as rights of women, rights of minorities, rights of indigenous small languages, and so on. And it's complete opposite of what Russia has turned into, which officially conducts the so-called elections, results of which are pretty much well known. I can tell you with great certainty that Vladimir Putin will be declared the winner of the March presidential election, so-called election, simply because the outcome of this so-called election will be tightly controlled, and it doesn't really matter how people vote, because the electoral commissions, which are under complete control of the government, will produce whatever numbers are given to them. Yeah.
Well, the one voter in that election has already turned turned out before breakfast. Um, uh, the Ukrainians have shown that they are able to distinguish between. They're able to rise above the factionalism when it comes to politics and unite at a time of war. Um, Thank you for that answer, Alex. If I may, I'd like to bring in a friend and colleague here, Vassal, who's currently in Dnipro. And Vassal, can you give us a quick mic check?
Hello, do you hear me?
We do, loud and clear. Vassal, are you safe? And could you tell us a little bit about what your experience in life is at this moment?
Yeah, Jonathan, now I am safe. I think maybe 20 minutes ago finished one more attack, Russian drone and missiles attack. I think it was maybe 10 explosions or maybe more, or maybe less, because sometimes it's difficult to understand what is blowing here, or exploded here. Some were very near because it was very loud, very loud. And also I know that one of my clients' fabric was damaged. I were called maybe 10 minutes ago. About injured and killed, I don't know. I haven't heard such information. I hope everyone is alive.
Thank you, Vassal. Did you get sufficient warning before this attack, or is this the type of attack where you received no prior warning?
I'm not sure what time it was, because we have air alert very often, and that is why I am mostly look at extra information. We have some extra information about information from our, I think, air defense units. They inform, is it can this air alert influence on Dnipro or not? And I'm look for their information, and their information was very recently. I think it's 1 minute before they written that you have to go to shelter because it will be explosions. But I think whole Ukraine air alert it was for maybe dozens minutes, but particularly when you are in Ukraine, when you are in Dnipro, if you will go in every air alert to shelter, I think you can't to work, you can't do anything. That is why you have to you have to use more, I think, more information.
So anybody,
But sometimes some rockets when hit at Dnipro, they were before every air alert. You heard explosion, and after that air alert starts.
thank you, Vasil. Anybody up on the panel right now, of course, please feel free to ask Vasil or Alex anything, and of course, anybody in the chat the same. I'll just take a moment for questions.
I would maybe ask Vasil real quick if there's any thought to the reaction from Ukrainians about all the demonstrations.
It's really appreciate, and it's I think it's helped to understand Ukrainians that we are not alone. It's very significant, important. I can tell about my opinion and my friend's opinion with whom I have spoken. It shows us that we are not alone. It's cruel important. Thank you everyone who stand with Ukraine. Thank you everyone who went on rally, who support Ukraine as he can by information, by donation, by every deed. Thank you everyone.
Thanks. Back to you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Joseph, and thank you, Vasil. As we know, and Alex, as you know, the solidarity for Ukraine does not exist on just one day a year. I'd like to play an interview, if I could, with a gentleman who makes this happen on a regular basis, and we'll just take a second to load.
Do you mind if I take a photo of your signs? I really like them. Can I ask how much do you bring these signs out to the street? Is it every week?
Yeah, we got the protest 10 Downing Street every week, Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah, Wednesday 6 till 8 p.m. At the moment, we do it on Friday because of the Palestinian protest. We do Friday 6 till 8 and Sunday 3 to 5. Every single week.
Every week, even in the rain,
Doesn't
in the
matter.
cold,
Rain, sun, every single week.
I haven't been to every weekly one. I wish I could have done. I work.
That's great. Thank you for your
as
support.
many as I can.
We really appreciate the help for people.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the winds, through the cold, the snow, the hail, they're three days a week. Alex, what's been your experience of the evolution of these rallies in London that you've seen?
I try to come to these rallies as much as I can. I don't go 3 times a week, sadly, but I try to come at least once a week. Most likely on Sunday, but sometimes I go on Friday evening as well. The numbers are not particularly great because these events happen, 3 times per week, and people have other things in their lives. They have children, to raise. They have jobs. They have other commitments which keep them away from these rallies. But there are always people. There are always at least several dozen people, including in really foul weather, including, under rain or sleet, and in cold, and there are some days in winter when it's really windy. People still come, and I think it's very important because it shows that this initiative is ongoing, it's needed, and it keeps the reminder about the importance of supporting Ukraine alive. So I have massive respect for the organizers of these rallies. There are always speakers from the organizers who are all obviously doing it, in their own free time, and nobody pays them for that. But they are trying to help this initiative as much as they can. I think it's absolutely great and very important that Ukrainian community still is organized around this issue of support, that it holds those rallies. There are occasional, larger rallies which are linked to events such as the second anniversary of the invasion. But, often when there are particularly terrible events happening in Ukraine, such as, mass missile strikes, more people turn up because they feel the urgency and the need to turn up and to show their support, to show their solidarity with Ukraine, to show that it's not all right to be throwing all those missiles and UAVs at Ukraine and killing Ukrainian civilians, and including children. So it's extremely important, and occasionally these rallies take place not near Downing Street but next to the Russian embassy. Location outside of the Russian embassy is quite unfortunate because it's a very busy road, Notting Hill, and that road is busy with buses in particular, and it's got very narrow pavements, and people are not allowed by the police to hold protests on the side of the road immediately next to the embassy. So you only have the pavements across the road, which is incredibly narrow, and there's simply not much space. That's why holding those rallies on Whitehall, where there is more space, and where the rally doesn't stop the pedestrians and is not an impediment to pedestrians just walking past, is a better location. Though obviously, I think a lot of Ukrainians would have preferred to protest outside of the Russian embassy to remind the Russian diplomats who are here in London that their country is not liked, and what their country is doing is horrible and criminal. I was actually at a protest outside the Russian embassy earlier today, and it was not a Ukrainian protest, but a protest by anti-Putin and anti-war Russians who live here. There is an organization called Russian Democratic Society, which was set up in 2022, and they hold events against the war and against Putin. And they held this event today. There were not just their flags, but also Ukrainian flags there. And they chanted that they are against the war and that they support Ukraine. They are also raising funds for Ukrainian refugees to assist them with leaving Ukraine and settle in wherever countries they end up. So there are these initiatives even by Russians who live here, because not all Russians who live, especially those who live outside of Russia, are buying Putin's propaganda and are supporting Putin's war.
Thank you, Alex. And it's impossible to escape the fact that we just have to watch interviews with the pilots and the captains of these Black Sea vessels that launch attacks against Ukrainians, that are launching attacks against Dnipro right now. We can't mince our words about this. They are murdering bastards, and I'd like to bring in Vasyl, who has an update on what exactly has just struck his city. Vasyl, could you tell us? Could you give us an update that you've received in the last few minutes regarding the number of missiles which have struck Dnipro?
Yeah, I can only inform that 3 rockets were destroyed and 3 drones were destroyed. Whole quantity of missiles and drones I haven't know yet, maybe after. And also I know that several people are injured, but it maybe changes in this, because one of I'm not sure, or rocket or maybe drone hit house, one house, not
How's this?
not apartment building, but
Vasyl, you go to work every day. You lose sleep during these air raids every night. You then wake up in the morning and you live your life and you look after your family. And from a great distance far away, people in Russia are launching these attacks against Dnipro, against the power stations, against its very important hospital that you have there. Could you give us an idea of the scale of this particular attack, just from your own subjective experience as one man in Dnipro right now? Is this attack heavier than normal, or is this just a standard part of a Ukrainian's week in Dnipro?
Jonathan, it's complicated to answer, but I try. First of all, I want to say that I don't want to adopt to live under missiles, drones. I want to live in peace, but I understand that peace may be only if Ukraine will win, because if we will lost, me or my family or other Ukrainians, I don't want to even imagine what will be. That is why I see only one way. Also about Russian terrorist attacks, we hate them, absolutely hate them all. They are all guilty, except those Russians who are in our military services, in our, if you know, RDK unit, or who left Russia and donate and make a contribution to Ukraine and Ukrainian army.
Thank you, Vasyl. I hope Ukrainians have seen some of the solidarity which has been expressed worldwide this weekend.
Yeah, it's as I said, it's very important. It's crucial important when you see thousands of people in London, in Barcelona, in Paris, in Stockholm, in many cities, countries, in Washington, in Toronto, in Prague. I will not say every capital and every city, but it's very important. When you see this, you understand that other people understand what the fucking shit. I'm sorry, what the fucking shit is Russian invasion, Russian cruelty, Russian terrorism, and it have to be stopped, because if it will not stopped, it will continue against another countries.
Thank you,
It
Vasil.
will explode all world, not only Ukraine.
There's some common features which exist at solidarity rallies across the world. And Alex, I was wondering if you could describe.
Do you hear me?
Vasil, we hear you. I think your connection dropped off for a second. Can you hear us, Vasil? We'll try and cycle you up, Vasil. Do get underground and stay there. Thank you. And we'll bring you back up. Alex, could you give our audience, could you give everyone an idea of some of the features that?
Somebody hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us? I think that's the issue. Alex, just while we sort out a couple of tech issues, and thanks for sticking with us, Alex. The common features that we see at these rallies, could you give us an idea of something which is a reoccurring thing people take to rallies?
Yes, absolutely. First, I think what's important is that these rallies show massive international solidarity. It's not just Ukrainians who are displaced by the war who go and protest. It's also people from those host countries, but also people from all over the world. You know, London has significant populations of diasporas of people from Poland, from Baltic states, from Czechia, from, you know, there are Belarusians, there are Georgians, all kinds of people, and they all show their solidarity with Ukraine. The same goes with the British people. A lot of British people turn up to these events because they understand that this is an existential war for Ukraine. Ukraine is fighting for its independence and freedom and its survival, and it's a war in which Ukraine needs support of every country which can provide this support. So I think the one of the key features is how international these rallies are and how unifying they are. They are uniting people from various backgrounds, various origins, various countries, uh, standing for what is right. And right now it is to support Ukraine and to arm Ukraine and to provide Ukraine with the means to defend itself against the invasion and uh, preferably to defeat the Russian invaders. Ukraine is not asking for other countries to send armies to defend it. It's only asking for weapons so that Ukrainian army can defend Ukraine and can defeat the Russians. And I think this recurrent chant of "Arm Ukraine now," which you hear across a lot of rallies in a lot of countries, is extremely important because saying that, you know, Western countries are going to be with Ukraine for as long as long as needed is not good enough. Ukraine needs weapons now. We all have seen what has happened in Avdiivka, in Donetsk region in eastern Ukraine, because Ukraine simply doesn't have enough ammunition. I've been reading today that in the area of Kupiansk in Kharkiv region in eastern Ukraine, Russians are using 6 times more artillery shells than the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainians simply don't have enough artillery shells. They have to ration them, and they cannot definitely cannot advance, but even defense is incredibly difficult, and Ukrainian forces have to increasingly rely on first-person view drones, FPV drones, to hit targets across the line of contact, because they don't have the shell. They have the artillery guns, but they don't have anything to fire from those artillery guns, and it's a very desperate situation. Ukraine needs arms now. We can't wait for indefinitely. Um, uh, when there is political will or financial resources, uh, we need to act now. And I think this message of urgency of situation, that Ukraine really needs its support of Western countries now. I think it's also something that is happening across rallies globally, not just in London.
Well said, Alex. That chant of "Arm Ukraine Now" has been heard, has gone from the street and into through the windows of Whitehall and into policy regarding Ukraine. And I was wondering if something which I've seen quite a lot at Ukraine rallies, people holding placards bearing the pictures of fallen Ukrainian warriors. It's been a particularly moving sight, but there are other things which I find people take to these rallies which hold significance to them, and I'd like and I hear what you're saying about that diaspora from Eastern Europe, particularly the Baltics. There's a lot of Lithuanians, Latvians that I meet at the London rallies, and I'm sure that this is not limited to London alone. I'd like to play, if I could, an interview with a gentleman who had a flag with him yesterday, and it was of particular significance to him. So I'm just going to roll the tape on this one.
Can I ask you a question about your flag? I'm intrigued about the signatures
Yeah.
that you have on it.
First of all, I'm not Ukrainian. I'm Lithuanian.
Are you Lithuanian?
I'm Lithuanian, yeah, but obviously I support Ukraine. You don't need us to say. Actually, on one kind of group online, and there was like an auction to buy a flag, right? So I auctioned and kind of won this auction. But for me, it's more than the money, you know. By the time I received this flag, I was informed by the person who was organizing this auction that some of the people who signed this flag had already kind of been killed. So yeah, so it's like more than a flag. This is more than, just a piece of whatever. But
this is part of their legacy.
Absolutely. So it's very kind of symbolic and very kind of powerful meaning of this flag.
And you have 93 on it. Were these people from the 93rd Mechanized Brigade?
They were, yeah, they were.
They are legendary.
They are legendary, exactly. And I have a picture showing them holding this flag with all the signatures as well. I can show you on my phone if I can still find it. So yeah, with all the messages and everything, So,
where are you from?
Ukraine.
Where in Ukraine?
Kharkiv.
That interview for the end. Alex, if you're still there, could I ask you, is this an experience which you've encountered?
Yes, I know people whose family members have died in Ukraine. I have family in Ukraine. None of my family members have been killed or injured, but I have friends who have been killed during this war. So I think a lot of people have this experience, and it's particularly of importance for those people who have their family members, their brothers, their sisters, their fathers killed, including on the line of duty. But in some cases, people were killed in their own homes, which were attacked by Russian missiles or UAVs flying into those homes. So, the longer this war continues, sadly, the death toll and the number of people injured in Ukraine will continue to grow. We see that Russia is using this indiscriminate shelling and bombing, especially of cities and towns in the east, which it claims that it is liberating by fundamentally reducing to rubble. Just today, the Russians conducted missile strikes on Konstantinivka, an important city and railway hub in Donetsk region, north of Avdiivka, and they destroyed a railway station. And that's what Russian so-called liberation is. Russia is just reducing those cities and towns to rubble, to complete devastation zone, that it becomes impossible to defend those places. And we witnessed this in many locations across Ukraine, in Severodonetsk, in Popasna, in Bakhmut, in Mariinka, and now Avdiivka, which was captured by the Russians just recently, because there was pretty much nothing left to defend. The city was destroyed completely.
Sorry for the loss of friends, acquaintances, and for not the countries like mine and NATO partners of Ukraine, that we did not do enough since 2014, and this has cost the lives of so many fallen flowers of Ukraine. Thank you for bringing us that story, Alex.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. We're going to wrap up there.